Good morning. I'm glad. It seems either you had a good rest, or you enjoyed the Korean reception, or you had a nice breakfast this morning. Whatever it is, at least we are thankful we're able to wake up and breathe, and it's another day, and it's the last day. It's the exciting day. At least we get to know where ADF is heading to by the time we leave here tonight. So while people are getting settled in, thank you again for being here. I know some of us had to leave early, some of us left last night. But for the rest of us who are here, welcome again to today. And this morning we start with the plenary lift. This is what our colleague from WFP was trying to highlight and see what they do. So today we get more details on what heavy lift is, cargo drones, cargo UAVs, and what they do. So to start us off, if I can call on Oleg to please come up. He's going to be the moderator of this session. And he'll call up his team. Welcome. A hand for Oleg, please. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for coming the last day. So I see so many people survived the reception of the last evening. So we would like to talk about heavy lift. That's a little bit different subject from the previous discussion. So we are living in the era of unprecedented change in aviation, when the goods can be delivered to people in a remote location using these unmanned cargo vehicles. So all combined efforts of people in aviation industry started to materialize in harmonizing regulation, allowing to fly safe and respectful to all participants in the air and on the ground. We started to see quick and very efficient blood transportation helping to save life of people. We see successful efforts to vaccinate children in remote locations using the cargo drones. And all this is done with drones capable to move less than 5 kilograms of cargo. It was presentation yesterday from Pierre Lucas, and you know that in WFP we airdrop like more than 30,000 tons a year, which airdropped last year. In World Food Program, we would like to move food and medical equipment to remote locations. And this creates one more challenge: how to move more than 100 kilograms with unmanned aircraft system. This is an incremental change, but this change is making principal difference in mode of operation. So now we operate from the airport shared with a manned aircraft and fly in airspace controlled by the National Air Navigation Service provider. So how can we address those challenges? So we may not address them right now, but I would like to invite a panel of extremely competent people that would answer some of those questions. So the first, I would like to invite Kofi Asante. And Kofi is a head of strategy and business development for Elroy Air Company. Yes, welcome, Kofi. Then I would like to invite Johann Dauer. And Johann, he is a team leader and research scientist from German Aerospace Center, DLR Institute. Welcome, Johann. I would like to invite to the panel Sanjeev Gadhia. Sanjeev, he is the CEO of Air Operator in Kenya, Astral Aviation. And I would like to invite Marc Schwarzbach. Marc, he is a Chief Technical Officer and Managing Director for Phoenix Wing Company. So thank you, gentlemen. Can you go and introduce yourself briefly? You are?
Hi, good morning. How's everybody doing? Good, awesome. My name's Kofi Asante, and I'm the head of strategy and business development at Elroy Air. At Elroy Air, we're building autonomous vertical takeoff and landing systems that can deliver about 135 kilograms over a 500-kilometer range, all at the speed of 190 kilometers per hour. Our thesis is that democratizing access to express logistics can improve the quality of life around the world.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning also from my side. I am Johann Dauer from the German Aerospace Center. I've been working in research of unmanned aircraft for 10 years now. I lead a team about safe autonomy, so the question on how to increase the capabilities and autonomy of unmanned aircraft, and that in a safe way, approving the software and components you would need for these kind of things. In the past 4 years, I've been working on unmanned transportation and focusing on payloads of 1 ton from conceptual side and also supervise and help with the design of prototypes and doing research and certification efforts in this context.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sanjeev Gadhia, and I'm the founder and CEO of Astral Aviation, which is a cargo airline which is based in Kenya. We've been flying cargo for the last 20 years, and our smallest aircraft is a 5-ton aircraft, and our largest aircraft is the 100 tons Boeing 747 freighter. After operating an airline for over 20 years, I got a little bit bored and decided to set up a drones business about 3 years ago in Kenya. And the idea of the drones business is to actually focus on the delivery of last mile services using large cargo drones. And we are the pioneers of the FlyOx cargo drone, which is currently in manufacture in Spain. Has a capacity of 2 tons. It can fly on a range of 1,200 kilometers and can land in unpaved airfields and in water.
Right. My name is Marc Schwarzbach. I'm the CTO of Phoenix Wings, and we are a German company which develops cargo drones, a bit smaller than the colleagues here. But we are actually participant of the Lake Kivu Challenge, which will start the next days. And yeah, that's about it.
And Marc has a knowledge about technology in developing those heavy lift drones.
Yeah, I've been doing that since 15 years.
Okay. In World Food Program, we would like to work with ecosystems of established air operators. We would like to work with people who know what means safety, quality, maintenance, and training systems. So we are looking for the drones that are capable to move more than 100 kilograms. Even better, we would like to have drones capable to move more than 1,000 kilograms for the distance of 200 kilometers. They should move this cargo at the cost of about $200–400 per metric ton per flight hour to be competitive with manned aviation. And we also would like each and every operator of drone to be sustainable in the marketplace where they operate. And that means they should have business diversification. They should work with World Food Program, with other humanitarian organizations, with the mining industry, oil and gas, so maritime spare parts, etc. So we would like them to be successful and through this success get the capability to deliver humanitarian cargo in places where we need it. So now I would like to have 10 minutes of a presentation from each panelist, and then we will have small questions, several questions to panelists, and if time permits, we will open the floor for auditorium for some questions. Thank you.
Good morning. As a recap, I'm the head of strategy and business development at Elroy Air. At Elroy Air, we're building autonomous vertical takeoff and landing systems that deliver 135 kilograms over a 500-kilometer range. And I'd like to show you a video of some of the work that we've been up to. Thank you. At the core of all the things that allow us to be human, we have to think about the fabric of what connects us, which is logistics. Logistics is over a $5 trillion market globally. The reason for that is each one of us, with every piece of what we're doing in our day-to-day, have to interact with it. Whether it's medical supplies, whether it's food, whether it's water, all of us have to interact with logistics on a day-to-day basis. But something's changing and fundamentally evolving about this space. I think we're all familiar with the Amazon effect, this concept where same-day shipping is starting to become the norm in a number of environments. The problem that's currently addressing a lot of shippers is that infrastructure isn't keeping up with the demand. Whether it's reliable roadways or airports, fundamentally, the Amazon effect is putting a strain on what we know as our today's source of logistics. And the same type of demand that we're looking for in the commercial market is also something that's very pressing in the humanitarian space. Over 1 billion people around the world are disconnected from reliable roadways. And in the blink of an eye, over 600 million people over the course of just 1 year can have their lives drastically altered. Whether it's hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, a number of people around the world can do a lot better if they fundamentally were able to get the resources that they need quickly. And so that's why we built this, the Chaparral, an autonomous vertical takeoff and landing system that can deliver 135 kilograms over a 500-kilometer range without the need for airports or infrastructure. See, our aircraft has substantially better operating costs than traditional air cargo vehicles. The rationale for that is because of our hybrid electric system, the long time before overhaul with our maintenance parts, and then the autonomy that allows us to be able to operate all around the clock. So let me walk you through a concept that's been top of mind for us at Elroy Air. If we need to decouple from infrastructure, I want to basically take you through what could happen right now and why that's so important. See, if you had to get something quickly from point A to point B, we like to think about it as a direct shot. But the reality is there are multiple steps involved. Whether you have to pack the plane to then go from one airport to another airport, to then have vans that then transport it to trucks, there's a number of steps, and if any single one of them don't work, then the whole supply chain falls apart. We want to simplify this concept to 3 steps. 1, you pack the pod. 2, the aircraft comes over to pick up the pod. And then 3, when it gets to its destination, it will deposit the pod at the place that you wanted it to go. We believe that this combination of vertical takeoff and landing and autonomy actually will permit around-the-clock 24/7 operations and increase the tempo for a lot of communities that are currently waiting for goods once every week or once every 10 days. When we look at the space that we're in right now, currently the restraints that are happening because of roads make it so that you have to go to a specific destination. Roads are fundamentally restrained for this reason. Not only are they expensive, but they also make it so that even if you needed to go to other points, you have to deviate from those. And so our thesis is that vertical takeoff and landing actually permits you to be able to land in an almost dockless scenario. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what's happening around the world, especially when it comes to the urban population and how they're thinking about getting around cities. Something that's been shifting is the fact that there used to be station bikes in certain areas, but now there's dockless bikes and dockless scooters. This fundamentally permits a number of people to be able to get from point A to point B all around the city, as you can see on the right, as opposed to having to go from one spot to the other. We believe that we can fundamentally do the same thing in the sky. And what better place than right here in the continent of Africa? We've seen time and time again with this leapfrog technology that the continent of Africa is not only prime for innovation, but accepting and ready for it. Whether it's cell phones, whether it's Wi-Fi, whether it's mobile banking, or even e-commerce, Africa as a whole has had some of the highest adoptions. We've seen that in some regions, that even from a mobile technology perspective, over 80–90% of the communities are in the loop. And so I want to walk you through something that's very close to my heart, which is where my dad grew up, which is where a lot of my family is. And that's Ghana. See, if we were to put our aircraft in the center of Ghana, if we were to place this in Kumasi, all of a sudden, if you were going to try and deliver goods from one part of the region to another, it could take hours, 10, 12, 15 hours to be able to go through a number of the roads, whether it's traffic or challenging infrastructure. Our system would make the entire region of Ghana accessible in less than 1 or 2 hours. And let's take a bigger country, Nigeria. If we were to put our system in the middle of Abuja, we would be able to connect to over 80% of the country in less than an hour or 2. For one of the largest, if not the largest economy in Africa, which has been a pioneer for e-commerce and has one of the largest populations, we believe that this can have a phenomenal impact on the region. And then let's take where we're at right now. We look at the country of Rwanda, a pioneer for this type of technology, and we think about placing our aircraft right here in Kigali where we're at. If we were to do this, in less than 1 hour, we would be able to connect to every single community, warehouse, store here in the country. And so I want to leave you with this thought. We don't have all the answers, but we believe if we listen hard enough that the continent and multiple countries within Africa can help us along the way. We want to serve the communities and hear what it is exactly you want us to do for you. Our thesis is that we don't have to build highways on the ground. We can fundamentally use the skies to connect communities in ways that fundamentally were not possible before. Thank you.
So if we talk about heavy lift transportation, what do we do and what do we think about this at the German Aerospace Center, DLR? So 4 years roundabout, we started with a whole cluster of projects looking at unmanned aircraft carrying 1 ton of payload. And we started this project right at the time when in Europe the new specific operation risk assessment came into being. And the question arose whether it is possible to fly these kind of aircraft in low altitudes over sparsely populated areas and find a cost-efficient solution that makes the operation still safe and maybe find sweet spots for industry where this kind of aircraft that don't exist today may have a place in the world in the future. What we do in this research project is looking at many different aspects. So we look at technology on the one side, including data links, the ground handling, airport integration, runtime monitoring, geofencing, and all these different questions that are important for the technology. But we also look at use cases. So where's possible economic value for these kind of aircraft? And how do you maybe certify this kind of aircraft? So is there actually a sweet spot, or is that not possible to certify it? Does it not make sense to use the specific operation risk assessment for this large aircraft? And we believe that it actually does. But as a researcher, looking at use cases, where do you apply these kind of aircraft? Of course, high demand delivery is one topic, but humanitarian aid is another. And as a researcher, it's a bit difficult to understand how this sphere, this world of humanitarian aid actually works. So what we did 2018 was setting up a project together with the UN World Food Programme and a company from the Netherlands called Wings for Aid, which was a very small part of the overall project that I was just talking about. And in the beginning of 2018, in a few months, we set this project up and went to the Dominican Republic with an existing smaller unmanned aircraft that we operate at DLR to get first-hand experience in a humanitarian simulation and find out how this world actually does work and how we have to design aircraft to bring value to these kind of operations. So DLR, as I said, we want to learn how this sphere of humanitarian aid actually works. And we want to validate our use cases that we have been using for the larger scale projects. The topics of Wings for Aid are a new technology for dropping. They have a new carton box that you also find on the booth here on this conference. And they wanted to assess this for the first time on a real operation of a drone. And then the World Food Programme, of course, was interested in getting first-hand experience and improve their knowledge, the knowledge that they have about how to operate drones and what kind of drones actually bring value to their mission to bring food to people in need. So the helicopter that we used is based on a Swiss company called Swiss Drones. It's the Dragon SDO-50. This is an aircraft we have been operating at DLR for several years now. We extended this aircraft to the capability of dropping the boxes from Wings for 8. You see underneath this image how these boxes unfold when you drop them, so they don't need a parachute. And the nice thing is you can make them completely out of carton and completely out of paper, so they will biodegrade, and there is no waste left at the destination, so you don't have to bring anything back, while at the same time these boxes can be created very cost efficiently. So to begin with, the CEO of Wings for 8, Barry Copperberg, and myself, we went to the Dominican Republic to do a pathfinding mission, to talk to all the stakeholders, including the Red Cross, including civil defense, including the institution over there that does coordinate emergency situations, and to find representative missions that are inspired by real catastrophe events. And we identified 2 regions, one very close to the Haitian border in Jimani, where there is a salt lake that regularly floods the environment and cuts off people from the environment that then have to be provided with food or medicine or shelter. And then there is a place further to the north called Bajoyuna, and there is a river that almost every rainy season floods the environment. And almost every year you have to provide people in need over there, and a drone like our Super Artist could be a solution for a situation like that. So we defined several beyond visual line of sight flights that were representative of these catastrophe events. And we invited all the stakeholders there to evaluate our mission, and after performing this operation, assess how we performed compared to the other solutions they had, to really learn how we could improve the logistics chain in humanitarian aid. Then, of course, one of the big topics, if you want to do this pilot operation, is transportation of this aircraft. So this helicopter weighs around 100 kilograms, so it's not a small aircraft or a small drone. And you have to export it. And if the capabilities of this drone exceed certain characteristics, it's quickly rendered dual use, which makes it very difficult to export and re-import. So we actually had to reduce the capabilities of this aircraft to easily transport, to make it more easy to transport this aircraft into the Dominican Republic, to be able to handle this project in the few months that we had for setting all this up. This was done by a company of Germany called Renus Logistics, as well as Wings for 8. And then, of course, a big topic is the flight permit. And we use the same approach that we look at the larger scale projects, the specific operation risk assessment. We assess the ground risk. We fly over sparsely populated areas only. We don't cross people, we don't cross buildings in this case. We made sure that the air risk is mitigated by separating it from other aviation. And then did a first assessment on how this specific operation risk assessment actually works in real application. 2018, that was one of the very early application of this kind of operation, with this kind of operation carrying around about 20 kilograms of payload to a destination. So that was a big challenge, and it was a good opportunity to work with the Civil Aviation Authority there. That was very fruitful, and we learned a lot from it. So a few impressions. So you see on the left side the Jimani region, and you see, as it is a salt lake that from time to time floods the area, the salt water poisons the vegetations around, so it has an impression of a desert. So it was really warm there, and for myself it's quite warm. Actually, the drone handles the heat better than I do. And on the right side, you see the northern area, which is completely green. You have lots of water there, and there is lots of vegetation, lots of rice fields. And we were performing these operations over these rice fields. And then the lower right, you can see the team that was involved in the operation of this pilot test operation. So a few statistics. We were there in the Dominican Republic for around about 2 weeks. We had 5 flight days and had overall 5 hours of flight time. While that doesn't sound much for a regular operation, it is quite a lot for research projects. So if you consider that all that is research equipment and an experimental setup, this is quite a lot. We have learned quite a bit. We did 16 missions overall, and we got quite a bit feedback from the stakeholders involved, including Red Cross, World Food Programme, Civil Defense, as well as COI, which is the authority in the Dominican Republic coordinating emergency responses. Here you see the box dropping, and it drops down. The box has even been improved since then, and then now is able to drop raw eggs without damaging them. So you can have a look at this box downstairs at the booth of Wingswade. Now, how does that move forward now? As I said, this was only a small part of the overall project. So we designed a new prototype, which is one step further towards the original 1 ton of payload that we looked at conceptual-wise. This aircraft is based on a gyrocopter. It can carry around about 150 to 200 kilograms of payload. It is a research aircraft, and it is flying. We had the first flight in 2018. Currently, we are improving its autonomy functions and are working on enabling long distance and beyond visual line of sight flight for this aircraft. And afterwards, we hope to perform longer-term operation to learn all the challenges and the open questions. As we are researchers, we are always looking for problems and open questions that are involved in operating such an aircraft of this size. So if, for example, you have ideas how this could be done, maybe here in Africa, we would be definitely interested in discussing with you. So if you have ideas, please approach me after this session. So this is what we do at the German Aerospace Center when we talk about heavy lift transportation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session, also from my side. First, let me give you a brief introduction of the scope. So, our company is Phoenix Wings, a young company from Germany. So you see the picture on the left. And we are developing cargo drones, and we are actually a participant of the Lake Kivu Challenge. And we bring a plane which can carry 10 kilogram over the distance that is demanded here. But I'm not going to talk about this technology, more on how to scale that up. And to put that into perspective, I mean, we work very closely with our partner and mother company, SF Express in China, which is a large logistics company, which has a fleet of aircraft operated mainly in China and worldwide, and which also is looking into cargo drones. Wait. It's a bit laggy. Okay, so how do we see large cargo drones in the whole concept of logistics as an introduction for the technology? So for the main long distance routes, we still see the big cargo aircraft like Boeing and Airbus being operated in the long run. And then the aircraft that I discussed here, the large UAVs, would be used for medium distance, medium weight operations. And then for the distribution station traffic, there could be smaller drones like you see downstairs or a bit bigger. And we see that on a global scale. I mean, we operate in Asia, we operate in Europe, and we are now here in Africa to see what's possible. And it's basically developing as a level playing field in the world because regulations converge. So we see these operations will be seen worldwide. And the operations first, of course, will be in medical and humanitarian area, but of course, as the wealth increases in countries, express delivery, like the colleague said, the Amazon effect, and even fresh product delivery become a very important market in that scope. So going more to the technical part of that, it's a point of scaling, which I want to make here. So if you're seeing the size of the aircraft and then the budget or people you need to develop and operate it, it's definitely not a linear scale. So if you increase the size, the budget will definitely rise exponentially. So saying we are in the left area now, in the green zone, and we want to increase the size of our craft. So if you just scale it up on the same technical level, you're going to go to the right and land in the red zone, which means you're going to get trouble. So you're either going to crash the aircraft or you have trouble with the regulations. So I'm not talking about the yellow zone up there. That means you probably work for the government and you have enough money. So seeing it like that, the factors is first the technology, that when you scale the aircraft, you have to not only scale the systems in size, but also in reliability and strength. And that means that it gets much more complex than just doubling the size means multiplying the effort and costs. And also you have to think about the infrastructure and safety aspects. I mean, it's a big difference to operate like a 20-kilogram drone or like a 1-ton drone. But one thing is, it's a nice line in that graph, but given the regulations that now are developing, it is definitely not a line, but there is going to be big steps in there. And that's an important point to make, because if you start increasing the size of your drone, looking at Sora, you will at some point see a jump in the sail level, which means that if you increase by 1 kilo or something, you increase the effort by a multiplier. So that is important to see, because that means there are sweet spots given by the regulations. And for us, that means it's not easy to scale it fitting to a simple factor, because then you are over that step, which makes it probably uneconomical. So for that, we see you have to think about scaling in 2 dimensions. The one thing is you can scale up the aircraft, which will definitely be the case for several applications. But as I said, there's definitely jumps in that scaling, which may make it unattractive for a market. So it should also be considered not scaling the aircraft, but scaling the fleet. Because, I mean, you can transport a ton in 1 flight of a 1-ton aircraft or 10 flights of a 100-kilogram aircraft. Of course, this has to work out so you can separate the cargo and it's not one piece. And also there's applications where it actually makes sense to split the cargo, for example, in goods that come over time. And this is something which definitely goes into the technical aspects and the economy of operations, of larger scale operations. And I want to briefly tell you about an example we saw with our partners last year, and that is a fresh food logistics operation, which involves transporting a special kind of mushroom from different mountains where they are grown to a central hub. And what you can see here is the central hub, and within the growing season of these mushrooms, which is like 6 weeks, there were like more than 20 tons of mushrooms transported with aircraft that can only take 3 kilograms. And if you can do a bit of math, you will see that involved more than 20,000 flights in that given time, which was quite a large operation. But this actually makes sense because the mushrooms grow over time. So for this, it's a scaling in fleet size, not in vehicle size. Okay, so saying that and putting it in perspective means that we see an integrated approach on that. So you have to take the best craft for a given part of the way or a total way, depending how long the transportation task is. So that includes actually ground transport, big manned aircraft, and different sizes of unmanned aircraft. And for that, let me come to the technical challenges and vision. So one important point is definitely automation. We can't talk about one aircraft, one pilot concepts in the unmanned domain, because that means we can only also put the pilot in the aircraft. It doesn't make a big difference then. So we definitely have to see an operation of multiple aircraft autonomously, or one pilot, multiple aircraft. And that means we have to expand the envelope with the ATC automation. So seeing that we don't need radio communication for each UAV or the like. And also, like I said, we have to fit the vehicle to the operation, because if we only design an aircraft to fit the regulation, it might not fit the operation. And also, if you have a transportation task, don't only think about, this is the weight I have, I need an aircraft which can carry that weight. Think about, can I distribute it? Does it make sense? And so, talking about the bigger aircraft, like heavy lift in a way of tons, so what I see is that it's really important to get the airspace integration right. And to really make it work, I see that we need a single digital sky where every vehicle that is going around is connected to the same network, including manned aviation and that should be harmonized worldwide. I know it's a hard process, but we should push it together, including all stakeholders in the aviation. And on the technical systems, I see that it doesn't make sense that every company develops its own flight control and flight management systems. I mean, even the big aircraft companies don't do that. So we should cooperate on that and also work together with the big companies in that domain. So I think if some of you saw the Garmin Autoland feature, which they now integrate in some general aviation aircraft, I mean, this is a way which is in manned aviation already taken. If we can work together with these companies and push it to the unmanned world, then there is actually an overlap which helps us on the integration, and also it is proven technology which might make it easier to get the integration actually working. And so, to summarize it up, I see that it's very important to go an application-centric approach. So really see that we optimize the aircraft for the task which we want to do. Because at the moment we tend to optimize really everything for regulations, and this is necessary to be able to fly. That's admitted totally. But at some point we really need to revisit those regulations and see if they really fit the needs of the application and the users, because in the end we have to make money with that. Because if we have to spend money on that all the time, it will not be a sustainable business model. And with that, thank you very much.
Good morning once again. Before I start my presentation, I just would like to say a few thank yous, and the first one is to the World Bank for organizing such a great event, and to thank George and his team, especially Rosa, because it's very difficult to organize an event like this, and they've been working on it for a long time. And I hope that we can recognize the importance of this event, and I trust that the World Bank will actually make this an annual event. So I'd just like to request all of you to please show your appreciation to the World Bank. I'd also like to thank ICAO and the entire ICAO UAV team for providing the support from a regulatory point of view, and for actually showing the guidelines to the civil aviation authorities on how to regulate the use of drones. So a really, really big thank you to ICAO for all the support that you've actually given to this industry. Thank you so much for that. And last but not the least, I'd also like to thank World Food Programme for recognizing the importance of drones as a way of complementing the existing fleet of aircrafts that they use, so that they can actually be able to efficiently move humanitarian cargo to some of the regions which are so badly needed. So thank you so much to the World Food Programme team for showing the importance of the use of drones. Okay. I'd like to just start by giving everybody a small introduction about who we are. We are a drone operator, so we're not a manufacturer, but we are an operator of drones, and we aim to be a Somalia and South Sudan. So what are our plans for the use of drones? I think the biggest plan that we actually have is last mile cargo delivery, and we are taking our expertise of flying manned aircrafts for over 20 years, and we're actually now using that expertise to fly cargo. And our focus is humanitarian cargo, but in addition to that, we're also looking at medical, agriculture, e-commerce, mining, and oil and gas. And then we have a separate division, which is agriculture. We're doing all the usual things that everybody else is doing, which is mapping and crop spraying. But there are two things which is very different of our agriculture strategy, which is where we are using drones for locust control. And we also have an amazing product for reforestation. In addition to that, we are setting up the first training academy in East Africa, which will be open in Nairobi, so that we can actually bring drone enthusiasts from all over East and Central Africa to our hub in Nairobi, so that we can actually train them on the use of drones. And we've actually done some really great things in the last 3 years, for which we have received a lot of recognition. So the World Bank in 2019 recognized us as being the most disruptive company in the field of data analytics and agriculture. And in 2018, Airbus actually looked at us as being the top 10 tech startups in Africa. And in 2017, we actually won the IATA award for being the most innovative company in the world. And we have a very simple philosophy in Africa, and this is what we live by. And our philosophy is access the inaccessible, connect the disconnected, and reach the unreachable. This is as simple as it, and that's really what we are all about. And what I've actually seen in the last 20 years of flying in Africa is we've actually seen a lot of challenges. We've been to some very, very difficult places with our fixed wing aircrafts. And I really think that the biggest problem that we have in Africa is that we have no infrastructure to support our aviation sector. And this is very true because we've got 54 countries in Africa, and only a quarter of them really have good infrastructure. A good example is Rwanda, and I'd really like to recognize that the government of Rwanda has really made a lot of efforts in the infrastructure field, but you still have many regions in Africa which really have very poor infrastructure. In addition to that, we also have a lot of challenges in Africa in terms of logistics. We've got challenges of insecurity, we've got challenges of bad weather and also bad terrain. But at the same time also, one of the realities we have in Africa is that it is very expensive to transport goods within Africa. So when you look at e-commerce, when you look at medical, when you look at humanitarian cargo, it is very, very expensive for a lot of organizations who are actually having huge budgets, which are even more expensive than the cost of the cargo, of moving some of this within Africa. And we've recognized that the use of cargo drones has actually got a relevant place in Africa, and it had actually, when you look at the use of cargo drones, we've actually got 3 use cases. And I think the biggest use case would be in the field of humanitarian, medical, and relief. And at the same time also, there's also a very big opportunity in commercial services, which is in the oil and gas sector, mining and agriculture. And last but not the least, we also have a lot of opportunities in postal and e-commerce, where we will actually be looking at deliveries within post offices and also the last mile. So there is a genuine need for cargo drones in Africa, because you've actually got very recognizable services that can be actually provided with the use of cargo drones. Now I'd like to introduce to you the FlyOx cargo drone, which is the largest cargo drone in the world. The FlyOx has got a capacity of up to 2 tons. It's got a range of 1,200 kilometers. It's got a speed of about 230 kilometers per hour, but the most unique thing about the FlyOx is that it can land in unpaved airfields and even in water. Now imagine how important that is in a situation like Mozambique, which last year was devastated by 2 cyclones. And we had a presentation yesterday from the gentleman in Mozambique. And can you imagine how you can actually use a drone to land in a river or in a lake and deliver humanitarian cargo to the people that are in need for it? And I think the most important thing to remember is that when there is a humanitarian disaster, it is the time that you take to reach the final person. And one of the problems that we've actually felt is that as an airline, we deliver the goods to the airport. But from the time it leaves the airport and it reaches a village or it reaches a school or it reaches a hospital, it can take up to 2 weeks. So what we are looking at is to remove the airport from the equation and go directly to the consumer, which is where the product is needed. And that is really what the whole objective of the cargo drone exercise is all about. In addition to that, we have a lot of advantages in the use of drones, especially the FlyOx. So we can actually go through poor terrain, we can make it more cost effective, and I'll actually be able to tell you what it will cost us and how it will compare to other types of transportation. We also have the flexibility, which is sometimes we are restricted in terms of crew duty time, and with the use of drones we will actually have that very, very big flexibility. And the most important thing is that we can do anything, anywhere, anytime, and by anyone. So I'd just like to give you an update on the FlyOx. We've done successful flights in Sao Tome. We were also very privileged to fly in Norway. And last but not the least, the FlyOx is currently in the Dominican Republic, where it's doing a number of flights, mainly on a pilot basis. In addition to that, the FlyOx has done autonomous takeoffs and landing both at day and night. It's also taken off from a very short airfield, which is less than 500 meters. And we've actually done over 260 kilometers of flight, and we've had no technical issues, and that is really amazing. Now let's just look at the comparison of the cost, because everybody asks me, what is the cost of your drone? Is it more expensive than manned aircraft? And the reality is that it is not. So when you look at the Astral drone, which is a FlyOx drone, yes, we've got a capacity of 2 tons, and our cost comes down to $750 per hour. That is what we will actually be charging. And this is something that when you compare it with a helicopter, we actually offer a significant reduction in cost compared to a helicopter. But again, we cannot compete with a truck, we cannot compete with a rail, we cannot compete with other forms of transportation. But when you're looking at the transportation of goods by air, we are definitely the most competitive form of transportation. And if you remember, I'd actually mentioned earlier about the high cost of transport in Africa. We believe that the use of cargo drones will actually bring that cost down. Now, I just wanted to share with you what our plans are. We really have some great plans as a company. And in the first phase, what we would like to do is to operate domestically in Kenya, which is a country where we are from. So what we will be doing is to roll out our FlyOx cargo drone commercially by the end of this year, where we would actually be able to reach in any points in Kenya. And then what we would like to do at the second phase is, with the cooperation of the stakeholders, including the civil aviation authorities and CASOVA, we would like to start cross-border drone operations. And this is something which is very possible with the FlyOx cargo drone. And what we would like to do is to reach out to countries within East Africa, including Uganda, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, the Congo, Somalia, and South Sudan. And we believe it is possible with the support of the regulatory authorities. So it's my appeal to the regulatory authorities that don't be scared of drones. We are actually going to regulate it in the right way with the support of ICAO, and we have to make sure that cross-border operations is a reality in Africa. And last but not the least, we have a bigger plan for this great continent of Africa, where we would like to now roll out the cargo drone operations in West Africa and also in South Africa, so that every country in Africa has got the opportunity of actually having large cargo drone deliveries. And I now would like to share with you a small video of the FlyOx cargo drone which was taken in the Dominican Republic. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So it was excellent presentations. I would like to go through the round of questions now to all the participants. And I would like to start with Sanjeev. So, dear Sanjeev, you are established air operator in Kenya. You have a fleet of 10 aircraft, and you also operate in some other countries surrounding Kenya. What would be your steps to introduce heavy lift cargo drone in your operation in Kenya and maybe in South Sudan?
Thank you, Oleg. When we decided to go into the large cargo drones field, we actually realized that there were 5 very important steps that we had to follow to get to the entire use of cargo drones. And in the beginning, you have to look at the importation process, which is a very important process which requires the approvals of the relevant regulatory authorities and sometimes also the Department of Defense. And the second phase is actually this phase of testing. What we aim to do is to make sure that we can test the cargo drone in Africa, which is very important for us. And really, with the support of the Kenya Civil Aviation Authority, we have already got a test site, which is where we will be having our FlyOx, and we will also be inviting all our stakeholders and regulators also to be there. Then the third thing, which is very important, is a pilot project. And again, we are looking at various pilot projects with our stakeholders, including the Wolfer program, and seeing how we can actually be able to show the real case situation of where the FlyOx cargo drone would actually have its capabilities and its advantages. The fourth phase, which is perhaps the most important one, is the certification. And this is where we really need the support of the civil aviation, ICAO, to actually provide the framework for such a large cargo drone to be certified. And then the last stage, which is the stage which is perhaps the most important of all of them, is the commercial aspects of it, where we have to make sure that we roll out the FlyOx cargo drone and offer it as a commercial service to any client in the world. So whether it is a humanitarian sector, whether it is the aid and relief, whether it's mining, oil and gas, e-commerce, we have to actually make sure that the product can actually meet the needs of all these sectors. So it's a 5-phase approach, and one where you have to be very patient. The entire timelines can actually be between 1 to 2 years, but we have to actually make sure that we see everything through, because there are really no shortcuts. We have to make sure that we do everything properly from start to finish.
Okay. Thank you very much. Johann, on your presentation, you mentioned that DLR is open for, is looking for open and difficult questions. So I have one for you. And with your experience of certification, of approval of heavy lift drones, what efforts do you see
are required to certify or approve such an operation by local CA in country, for example, in Africa. So how would you describe this?
Okay, Oleg, thank you very much. That is an important and very complex question, and I try not to answer with a lot in almost everything. So we have a situation where on the one hand we see larger scale unmanned aircraft involve higher risks in the operation compared to small unmanned aircraft. And then of course you have to make these aircraft much more reliable and much safer compared to the small ones. And this implies that the manufacturer of the aircraft has to invest quite a lot into the first drones. And on the other side, the configuration of drones and how they will look like in the future is not yet completely clear. I mean, the market has not yet decided whether VTOL aircraft is the one to go for or whether a classical fixed wing like the FlyOx is the one to go for. So we have a situation where on the one hand, we have lots of investment to be done on the one hand, and on the other, lots of variation. And that makes it very difficult for the civil aviation authorities and for the regulators to find appropriate means to make cost-efficient regulations that enable all these initial pioneering work, and that is one of the big challenges. And I think that there is a lot of cooperation needed between the countries, the civil aviation authorities, and the first heavy lift cargo drones to make first experiments, to do first things first, to learn from it. And this is what we at DLR actually strive for, to do experiments, to gain knowledge and play that back into the UAV community.
Okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Marc, I would like to ask this question to yourself. From technology standpoint, what do you see is the main challenge for heavy lift drone that they should overcome from the technology standpoint?
So, yeah, what I really see as the biggest challenge is to get a supply chain up and running for components for heavy lift drones, because as I said before, I don't think it makes sense that every company develops all the systems by themselves. So we need to get companies that focus on components like autopilots, propulsion systems that are then good enough to be certified.
Okay, okay. And I heard you mentioned Garmin.
That was just an example to say a big player who has probably the potential to go for like the FMS or something.
Okay, okay. Sounds good. So, Kofi, you are producing this drone that is able to carry more than 100 kilograms. So how you describe your operation of this drone in humanitarian reliefs for humanitarian? How would you kind of in detail would see different activities that can be done by your drone, and how would you diversify those activities also outside of humanitarian cargo delivery?
Yeah, great question, Oleg. The way that we're thinking about it on our side, from an operations standpoint, is that we have our pod, which is essentially the shipping container, which is decoupled from the aircraft. Because the pod is decoupled from the aircraft, you essentially have an opportunity where you can load multiple pods ahead of time. So we almost think about this as a conveyor belt through the sky. You have a number of pods on one side, a number of empty pods on the other side, and you just keep swapping them back and forth. When we think about the tempo of a lot of communities that the World Food Program serves and the effective cost associated with it, part of that challenge is being able to just increase the frequency and the utilization of those assets so they can continue to run all around the day and also at night. From our perspective, in terms of the second part of your question from diversification, there are three specific markets that we're currently exploring and then also partnering with. The first one is the Special Ops Division of the Air Force. They've been phenomenal in helping us with some of the R&D and then giving us insight into what's been effective for them in the past. The second one is something that I mentioned in our presentation, which is about the growth of e-commerce. So when we think of parcel delivery or even pharmaceuticals, we believe that our systems can be a catalyst for being able to connect a lot of communities with that type of growth. And then the third one, which is the one that's the closest to me and my leadership team, is the humanitarian side. And so the conversations that you and I have, Oleg, about food, medical supplies, and being able to service a number of the communities in the African region is one of the primary focuses. But then, to your point, we're also diversifying to make sure that we can address a couple of needs.
Okay. Thank you, Kofi. Thank you. I'm just wondering how we are on time. So does anybody give me the reference for the time? Are we okay and for one more questions?
He said 10 more minutes, that's fine.
Okay, so...
Are you taking questions from the audience?
We can. We have one more prepared question, or we can take a question from the audience if there are questions from audience.
We have 1, 2, let's start with 3.
Okay, sounds good. We'll take questions from audience.
Microphone on that side.
Good morning, my name is Spencer Horn. Thank you for a very, very exciting and inspiring panel. This is, I think, one of the really, really exciting aspects of drone delivery for me. I was just curious, we've been talking a lot about payload in terms of weight or mass, but I was wondering about volume as a constraint and how, each or any of you are looking or dealing with that particular aspect.
Okay. I'll just answer this quickly from the World Food Program standpoint, and then we'll ask then if anybody from the panel can answer this question. From World Food Program standpoint, our density is 0.4. That should answer the question. So in many situations, it's volume limited. Like, for example, if we talk about FlyOx, so FlyOx compartment density is 1. So in this case, it will be volume limited. Okay, and anybody wants to go?
Yeah, from our perspective at Elroy Air, the rationale for us to actually decouple our pod from the aircraft is because we know that the answer to that question is actually going to be pretty iterative. It's going to evolve over time. It's going to be different for a number of markets. And so similar to the trucking industry where you'll have multiple trailers associated with the power units, our thesis is that we can actually continue to evolve our volume without fundamentally having to change the configuration of the aircraft. So that's how we're addressing it.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to pick up this on density? Okay, thank you very much for the question.
Hi, I'm Gabo from Village Reach and the UAV for Payload Delivery Working Group. I'd like to hear your thoughts on the future of standardizing cargo payload compartments, similar that's been done in the trucking industry or in the shipping industry. And if you're currently thinking about designing for standards that would be certified by ISO.
Last question. I thought I saw 3 hands go up. Okay. I don't mean hands. We all have 2 hands, okay? But I mean 3 different people. Yes, this gentleman here in the front.
Thank you. Good morning, and thank you again for excellent presentations. As you know, the industry is well organized in aviation. We have IATA, CANSO, and I can mention many organizations. Do you think it would be useful to have an organization representing UAS, operators?
So we have 2 questions on do we need organization to represent US and standardization of the cargo compartment, right? Would like
I'm trying to give one perspective on the question of standardization of the cargo compartments. I think one of the strong sides of unmanned aircraft is their variety. You can design them more freely than you can for manned aviation because you don't have people on board. So there's a strong side in variation. You can tackle niches of problems more easily by designing aircraft for that particular scenario. And that, of course, involves always different cargo compartments. But on the other hand, if you have large-scale operations and we move over of substituting manned aviation with unmanned aviation, of course, at some point, we will also have to standardize the compartments as well.
Definitely standardization is possible. It is also a very good idea because when you look at the shipping industry, when you have the standard 20 and the 40-foot containers, and the aviation industry, in the side of the drones, I think it's something that the manufacturers would have to look at in terms of coming up with standardized cargo compartments. But I think the part which is very important is the ability to carry cool chain items like vaccines, for example, which require certain temperature controls. And this is something which is very important to actually build into the cargo compartment. And coming back to the association, now I am the vice chairman of TIACA, which is a very large air cargo association. And in the beginning of this year, we launched a new membership category for small, medium, and drone companies. And I'd like to encourage all the manufacturers and operators of UAVs to consider becoming a member of TIACA, so that we can actually be able to lobby with the regulatory authorities and actually make sure that the pace of regulations is something that will be expedited. And it is only the collective efforts that we can actually make as an industry will enable the industry to actually grow faster in terms of regulatory approvals.
Yeah, I just want to add a quick remark on the cargo size compartment. And I think the same like Mr. Dauer, that it needs to be more freely to adapt to the cargo you need, because the cargo shape, like the cargo compartment shape, has a huge impact on aerodynamics and therefore the efficiency of the aircraft.
Yeah, and then the last thought that I have around the standardization question. We've taken a lot of input from the Special Ops Division of the Air Force when you're thinking about resupply for critical goods like food or medical components or devices. We've also been actively listening to the groups that fundamentally are helping us connect more to e-commerce when you think about the FedExes and UPSs of the world. And so the input when we're thinking about volume typically lands into things that we can find readily available online, but then we're also making sure to take in insight from the groups that are likely going to be using our product the first time.
Okay, thank you. We discussed this on compartment, but did we mention about this organization question? Did anybody wants to answer about this?
I would love an organization.
Okay,
Yeah.
so everybody loves organization. Yeah. So from World Food Program standpoint on compartment, what I would say, we have a couple limitations. Right. So one is the density, which I mentioned, it's 0.4. And the second is 20 kilograms that can be moved by one person. And that defines more or less the size of the packaging. And this is when we talk about the cargo drones, I would say below 1 ton, when there is no mechanization to load. Above 1 ton can be different. It can be pallet, can be something different. But below 1 ton, I see this limited by those two parameters, which is a density and 20 kilograms that can be carried by the person to load and by somebody to pick up from the ground after the airdrop. So I guess we are on time. So thank you very much, all panelists. But before you leave, I would like to ask you one or two words how you would describe
2 words.
Heavy lift.
2 words, you say that?
Each 2 words, but actually 2 words literally. How would you describe these heavy lift cargo drones? Just what comes to your mind? 2 words that come to your mind.
Tough question.
Okay, I can short it to one word.
I'm going to stick with the 2 words.
2 words, good.
Connecting communities.
Connecting communities, great.
Challenge and fun, I would say.
Challenge
and fun.
And fun, okay.
Disruption and Africa being the superpower of drones.
Great. Love it.
I like the way you count.
I would say an inspiring challenge.
Okay, inspiring challenge. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great honor.
Big hand to them. Thank you very much, Oleg and panelists. And we do the usual. Here she comes, the fantastic lady. You know, these are designer shirts. They're made by a company called Motians, based here in Kigali, Rwanda. And they're very, very good. You know. Motians, you know what we'll do? We'll put up the address before the closing so that you can go visit them and see. But you won't get it. This is patented to ADF, not this design. We will. Oh, he's taking a picture of me or the shirt? Thank you very much, panelists, for this. We appreciate that.